Welcome to Front Office Bros. Today, we're going to be going through some Dynasty trade targets for rebuilding teams.
Hike!
Joe, not all of us are fortunate to make the playoffs, and we're going to have to make some contingency plans to build up our roster. So we're going to be talking about some trade targets for you that we've identified to go get for rebuilding teams. Who do you got as your first one?
Yeah, this one might have come to a surprise for you, but my first player I'm going to go with is going to be wide receiver Diontae Johnson. And, part of it is his value on Draft Sharks. I think, it's pretty favorable. It's currently sitting at 26. And then I just like the fact that he's currently 28 years old. He's going to be 29 next year. He's still a relatively young receiver. I don't know why the Ravens decided to trade for this guy, but they did. But I don't anticipate him being on the Ravens next year. I think the Ravens will cut him, take their comp pick, which is actually going to net them a better pick than the pick that they traded over to the Panthers to acquire him in the first place. And then hopefully, whatever team that picks up Diontae Johnson will be better for fantasy. And I think there's a good chance. I mean, Diontae Johnson is still, a really good route runner. He's always had the ability to get open. And I think if he's shown that with the offense that he's in, with a decent quarterback, he can really produce at a high level for fantasy. And I think this is a nice buy low opportunity for his high upside next year.
Well, the one positive, too, when it comes to Diontae Johnson is that he'll be a free agent for the first time.
Yeah.
He's really just been traded, to various, teams. Obviously first the Panthers, then for the Panthers, got traded to the Ravens. We had hoped that, for a good opportunity, because we knew that he was going to get traded. We had talked about him as somebody who's going to get traded, but his value is pretty much toast this year. I don't think you should expect anything from him on the Ravens. And I don't see the Ravens cutting him. They have no incentive to do that unless it becomes a locker room problem. So,
Right.
Yeah, right now, it makes a lot of sense for a rebuilding team.
Yeah, and I guess just, guys that kind of are around him in similar values at the wide receiver position. You got guys like Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Demario Douglas, Christian Kirk, Wan'Dale Robinson. Then, even at the running back position, you got some older guys like Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins, players like that.
So my first trade target that I'd recommend you go get is wide receiver Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze has had an underwhelming rookie season, I'd say. Right now, he only has one touchdown on the year, 76 targets, 41 catches for 543 yards. Overall, he's had some wow weeks, but not enough that you would really say that it's been a successful rookie campaign. And when it comes to Rome Odunze, I do believe that a part of his undoing is honestly because of the offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, a guy who came from Seattle Seahawks, was not very successful there either, and they felt that for some reason that Chicago, he'd be able to do wonders with them with Caleb Williams, and it really was not a good fit. Obviously, we know he's been fired, as well as Matt Eberflus. So you are taking a gamble in that whoever else they bring in could really change some things. But I do think that, whoever it's going to be an improvement. And not to mention, you've got kind of a three-legged hit chair going on there with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen is a free agent coming up next season. He's already talked about possibly going back to LA. Now, he could maybe come back to Chicago. Don't see that happening. So I think as a result, it's really going to be Odunze and DJ Moore. I think he'll benefit greatly when it's just going to be Odunze there. Looking at the trade value chart real quickly here, 46, which is effectively a mid, round one. I do think that kind of is a little high. I think as the draft gets closer, we always see more of a bump. These guys people get really excited about these players as they get closer. So you got guys like Travis Hunter, Teodoro McMillan, I think is how you say his name, but the Arizona receiver. So there's a lot of interesting players, Luther Burden. So I think you could probably hold off. Maybe you can get him for a later first, possibly. But even besides that, though, I think there are some other options. Heck, if I don't see it happening, but they've got like Chris Olave on here. If I could trade him to get Rome Odunze, I certainly would, especially the cloudiness surrounding him right now. Or maybe you trade a guy like Deebo Samuel and some other small pieces. I think that's possible as well. So, I think that Rome Odunze is a great guy to go get.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that, especially with the intrigue, like you said, of the possibility of Keenan Allen leaving. It's just not ideal for anybody to have 3 wide receivers and be a part of that. I mean, you kind of saw that with the Houston Texans a little bit, for the people that really like Tank Dell. But when it was, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, he was kind of the third fiddle, which I was surprised by. And even like everyone was so excited about, JSN as well, but then Tyler Lockett was there. But then now we're seeing, JSN finally take off. I think next year in the sophomore year, I think Rome Odunze could kind of take off in the way that JSN has been able to for the Seahawks. And ironically enough, it's, Shane Waldron impacted their rookie years in a negative fashion.
Well, you even saw, I think they asked JSN about Shane Waldron, and he basically, I forgot what he said, but he said something to the effect like no comment or like, like he made a face.
Yeah.
He definitely had something to say there. So that's a great point. I mean, if you look at JSN now, JSN's starting to take over. Tyler Lockett is becoming a non-factor, even if Keenan Allen does sign back with Chicago. You see JSN is really taking the next step forward. And so if you believe, now obviously they're different players, but they both, had a lot of buzz coming into their rookie campaigns. So I think Odunze should improve in his sophomore season.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store.
Joseph, who is your second trade target for Dynasty teams looking to rebuild?
Yeah, I'm going to go with quarterback Bryce Young. And
I never thought I'd hear you say something like this. I can't believe it.
I know. I know. It's crazy, man. I never would have thought I would be talking about a guy that, got benched earlier in the year for Andy Dalton. And then he's, still playing for that same team. Carolina Panthers are now using him. But the last couple of weeks, he's been looking better. And he's even had to face, the Kansas City Chiefs. He held his own there, 263 yards and a touchdown in that game. And then against the Buccaneers in a nice matchup, he was able to take advantage with, 298 yards and a touchdown. And this is just without a lot of, weapons around him. I mean, he's got Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette. Ironically, they're using David Moore, a guy who's just kind of bounced from team to team. Got a guy, Jalen Coker. And I think, with Jonathan Brooks next year, a full year, and some continuity at the coaching position for Bryce Young. We've seen Canales before, turn guys around like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield in Tampa. So I think a second year with Canales, some stability there in Carolina. They've already taken care of the offensive line. If they can just get him some more wide receiver weapons, based off of the play of the last couple of weeks, and I think Bryce Young has really learned from the benching that he took, and being able to watch Andy Dalton play seems to really have helped him, and he's seeing defenses better and everything. So I think there's a chance he carries that into next year. And at the very least, I mean, he's an option for you, in a super flex league, or at least a, quarterback 2 with some upside, and even in a single quarterback league. And his trade value is currently sitting at 11. You got a guy like Michael Penix ahead of him, who hasn't even really played in the NFL yet. They already got him ahead of him. But then, Geno Smith is at 14. Jared Goff's at 17 at the quarterback position. And then just looking at, cross position as well, guys like wide receivers. I mean, looking at the Darius Slayton, Tyler Lockett's of the world. So you don't have to spend a lot to get him. And there's, I think he's got potential, high upside potential if he, turns it around with Canales at the helm.
I just can't believe what I'm hearing out of you. This is remarkable. I never thought I'd see the day.
I didn't think so either, but this is just where we're at here.
Yeah. Well, no, here's the thing. I mean, you're not wrong. Bryce Young has definitely seemed to turn the tide here. Things were not looking good for him. I didn't think he'd ever get his starting job back. possibly due to that car accident that Andy Dalton suffered. Maybe he wouldn't have come back. But what he was able to do, even especially against the Kansas City Chiefs, the rapport that he had with the players, honestly, the moxie he had, to just, he played him to the wire. He really did.
Yeah.
So, and he's got some interesting pieces. I mean, I know he does really well with Adam Thielen. They're going to want to replace somebody like him. But even Xavier Legette has some potential. This team seems to be kind of heading in the right direction, like you said. And the trade value, it's so low. Why not throw a dart for this guy? Because ultimately he could at least become a solid backup for you. Or possibly if he continues on this path, he was the number 1 pick for a reason. Could be a guy who turns into it. Sometimes you got some late bloomers. Some, it doesn't have to be somebody just right out of the gate, just Ghostbusters and, they're all of a sudden this stud. Even look at a guy like CJ Stroud, guy that, last year had an incredible rookie year. People were expecting so much more with Stephon Diggs coming in the offense. And, I'm not saying Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. Obviously, Stroud has been better, but Stroud has been very underwhelming this season. So, it's something to keep in mind. Just because he just, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So,
Right.
be curious to see how they develop going into their 3rd year next year.
100%. And it's interesting. They're always going to kind of get compared being in the same draft class as well.
Another guy they're going to possibly be compared to as well as another quarterback draft in that draft class. That's quarterback Anthony Richardson, who's my other target here, which, can be somewhat of a gamble, right? I mean, his value is 23 on the trade value chart, which isn't that high. But you look at it, it's been up and down year for Anthony Richardson. Obviously, the completion percentage concern is definitely still a concern, maybe even more so. I know, Joe, that was one of your biggest concerns with Richardson. Honestly, you're hoping that Richardson goes the path of a Josh Allen, which Josh Allen was able to fix all of that. You are able to see a lot of the arm talent of Anthony Richardson. I do think that the completion percentage is not all his fault. There have been a multitude of drops that the Colts receivers have had. If you watch different replays of these games, I feel there have been a couple miscues that have not helped Anthony Richardson. And we got to remember, this guy had not played a lot of games in college. This is a developmental project. That's why it never really made sense to me why the Colts decided to get off this train and saying that we're going to start Joe Flacco this year. I know they want to make the playoffs, but what good is it? Do you want to be the Joe Flacco Cleveland Browns, get knocked out in the first round? What good is that going to do for you? You're back to square one. Joe Flacco is not getting any younger unless he finds the fountain of youth, which he's not gonna. So at the end of the day, you knew when you drafted Richardson this was going to be a project quarterback. So looking into this upcoming draft, I mean, who do you really have to really be excited about? You got guys like Carson Beck out of Georgia. I'm not so sure about him. You got Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. I'm not so sure about him. So it's like there aren't really, in my opinion, a lot of great options at the quarterback position. Just a guy like Quinn Ewers come out. Again, I'm not that excited about him. So why not take a flyer on a guy like Anthony Richardson, who I think still has all that potential? I want to give a ton for him. In a non-super flex league, you're talking about a 3rd round pick. That's not that bad. In a super flex league, you're talking about him possibly going for a late first. That might be a little hard to stomach, but maybe you can give a second and a few other players to be able to get you there. But I think it's worth going for a guy like Richardson. We talked about Young too. I think both of them, there was a reason why they were drafted so high. And if you're in need for a quarterback, don't know if this upcoming class is where you're going to find him.
Yeah, the upcoming draft class is a good point. That's what made me feel comfortable. Like the Carolina Panthers, I don't see even in like not only in the draft class, but then looking at like the quarterback free agents this year, there's really not even other free agents at the quarterback position that are going to be available for these teams to upgrade. So I just think, Bryce Young is gonna be there, and Canales is just gonna have to make it work. But Anthony Richardson, that benching for Joe Flacco just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, you're talking about the coach that drafted him, the same GM, and I get that they wanted to compete, but it's, to your point, like you knew that Anthony Richardson is a project. He played the least amount of football of anybody in that quarterback draft class, and you just knew the only way to make him better is to just let him play, and you got to go through the growing pains. So like you, I just didn't understand that benching. I'm happy to see he's back out there. And guess what? They're still in the hunt for the playoffs, and they've been winning games even with Anthony Richardson at the helm. And with his rushing upside too, I mean, that's just it, he, like you mentioned, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, those guys are, at the top and really good quarterbacks because of their rushing upside. And there's no doubt he provides that as long as he can stay healthy.
The only thing I could possibly think is that, when he came out and said that he, asked to get taken out of the game
Right.
because he was tired, maybe internally they were sending him a message to say, you just can't do that. I know it was made, at least from the public, we were made to believe that wasn't the case, that, okay, Joe Flacco is going to start the rest of the year because he gives us the best chance to win. We may never know, or we won't know until much later, until after. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Steichen's not even the coach any longer. Anthony Richardson's out of the league. But regardless, I just don't feel like I have a lot of confidence in this quarterback class. It's early yet. I mean, I do think a guy like Cam Moore out of Miami is interesting. But again, or you got that LSU quarterback, but none of them to me are as exciting as Anthony Richardson. And if the Colts can win, you bet your bottom dollar they're going to be rolling with Anthony Richardson again next year. If not, I don't know what they're doing. Somebody will want to pick him up. He's just too talented not to, kind of give this guy another shot.
Yeah, and we saw. I mean, I think the comparison to Josh Allen is a great one. I mean, he struggled early in his career, needed to play. By the third year, he was really good. And who knows if Anthony Richardson puts the work in the offseason, improves his accuracy, improves the footwork. I think maybe there's that year 3 kind of blossoming effect that Josh Allen had.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about a few Dynasty trade targets to go get if you are looking to rebuild. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.